I can't stand Billy Collins, but I am making an effort to put everything I can onto the channel, and Billy Collins is supposedly one of the forefront poets of our time. So here we are with a poem called Introduction to Poetry by Billy Collins. Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear, of course, inside the poetry discussion playlist here on the channel. Today's poem from Billy Collins, Introduction to Poetry. It reads as such. I ask them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with a rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. Okay, so here's the sort of gist of this poem. You should experience the poem. You should not decode it. You should live in the soul of the poem instead of persecuting it to find out its religion. This is fine and dandy. If that's your theory on reading a poem, that's great. Now, I think that part of this really bugs me. Part of this really bugs me because if we go back up to the beginning of the poem here, I ask them to take a poem. So we're looking at probably a professor here talking to his students, right? Probably that is the speaker in this poem, a professor who was asking his students to do these things with a poem, but all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with a rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. Aren't my students so stupid? Aren't my students so dumb? All they can do is this rudimentary task. This task that probably the rest of their professors have only asked them to do. We're not blaming the professors, however, just the stupid students. I used to have a friend who was a professor. I believe she only taught like the intro to English classes, things like that, which is probably why she had some issues with students. They are in introductory level courses. All she used to do was post about her students on social media. I couldn't stand it. Just talking crap on her students, on her own students. They're your students. They're your students. I ended the friendship with this individual because of a question very similar to the subject of this poem. After reading post after post after post for years of her talking absolute garbage on her own students and how dumb they were, we got into an argument about what art is. I maintain that the main point to understanding what art is understanding the difference between art and propaganda. If I have the end goal in mind when I write the poem, that's propaganda. If I have in my mind what you should take from this poem, that's propaganda. Art, in my opinion, is that which is to be interpreted. She said art was that which draws emotion. There's a very simple test for this. This individual did not like sports. Okay, fine, you get to not like sports. So she absolutely hated it when I rose the point, when I said, okay, great. The Kansas City Chiefs have a running back named Jamal Charles who is very exciting and who makes me stand up and scream every game. And sometimes he fumbles and makes me cry every game. Is he an artist? Of course not. Of course, football is not art. What is going on in this poem is very similar to that. It's fine and dandy. This all feels very good. This is very, very self-soothing, a poem. All of this, I say, drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out. Okay, great. What the fuck does that mean? Nothing. It doesn't mean anything. It's not an actual metaphor. It does not translate to anything. None of it translates to and look, I've tried very hard over the past few years to get away from cursing on the channel. None of this means anything. It's not telling you what poetry actually is. It's not helping you explore the poem itself. Worse than that, in my opinion, this is castigating poetry analysis. I think poems are tools more than anything else. Billy Collins would say poetry is an experience. It's an experience. It's to be experienced. It's a tool. You tool. The poem seems to be saying that a poem is this experience, and all they want to do is try to analyze it. Analysis is experience for the brain. Billy, analysis is experience for the brain, for the intellectual part of the person. To be, how do you say it even? In this poem, Billy Collins is simultaneously condescending as well as ruffian. Taking the ruffian standpoint that, no, the poetry's to be felt, man. The beatnik stance that, yeah, man. While saying my students are so stupid, all they try to do is really, it's very impressive, saying my students are so stupid, they try to analyze the poem while taking this sort of state of believing that the poem is not to be analyzed. I get tongue-tied in my words just talking about it because I don't think it makes all that much sense. The one thing, in my opinion, that does save him here, save him from being a complete, I don't know, I mean, the different standpoints that he takes makes you want to call him a hypocrite and a fuddy-duddy. But the one thing that saves him, in my opinion, is the all here, right? He's not saying what they want to do is analyze the poem. That's not what he's saying. He's not casting analysis as wrong outright. What he's saying is all they want to do is analyze the poem. The only thing they want to do is analyze the poem. This allows a little bit of leeway here for our speaker to say that there is more to poetry than this, but analysis is part of poetry. I think, and perhaps I'm wrong, that the tone of the poem, however, is different than that. I think that the tone of the poem is saying that poetry is never analysis. Anyway, that's what I have for this poetry discussion. I'm still upset at myself for cursing. If you like or appreciate this sort of thing, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel. Dropping multiple videos every single week. There's poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.